Hello, everyone. We're going to talk about Silent Hill Origins. We just finished our playthrough, and there's a lot to go over. Some interesting changes from a mechanical standpoint. A very interesting story, but this is what we're going to be talking about here. And then, of course, an overall review. So, let's talk about mechanics first. Now, this game introduces something mechanically that I don't think shows up very often. There might be one other game. I believe it happens in Homecoming, but I might be mistaken. There is weapon durability for the first time in the series, which is very interesting from a mechanical standpoint, where things you will use things and they will break. Your guns do not break, but any melee weapons you have will break. But other than that mechanical switch, it is very much a Silent Hill game. You have some puzzles, you have some exploration, you have some combat. I will say, playing through this one, this game also, which is different than most of the games in the series, does not have a difficulty choice. There is only one difficulty to Origins, which is another big switch from the series, because usually you can set either the game difficulty or the game and puzzle difficulty. You can shift those separate of each other, but in this case, you don't get a choice. You can only play as the one difficulty. So we did get the good ending. Mechanically, you can only get the good ending on your first playthrough. So we'll talk about the story stuff in a bit, but that's a big mechanical switch too. A lot of the other ones in the series, you have multiple endings you can get, but in this one, the first playthrough is always the good ending. So, also keep in mind, I played the PS2 version, which I believe is a port of the PSP game. So we did have a few issues. There was a glitch where whenever we would activate, like pick up something, sometimes it would activate like 3 times, so we wouldn't be able to read whatever we picked up, or we wouldn't be able to see what item it was. We have to go to our inventory and look for it. So there was a little bit of a bug there. But other than that, I don't think we ran into any other bugs. Mechanically, the combat is what you would expect. It's still that kind of like slow swing at your enemies kind of thing. Again, I will say this game is harder though, especially if you're doing melee. Because a lot of the enemies have a way to close the distance with you very quickly. From the starting enemy having a charge that goes into a grapple. There's also QTEs in this game, quick time events, which I don't think show up in the earlier games either. I think most of them are just like spam a button to get something off of you, but that's basically it. And then, let's see, what other mechanical things do we have? I think that's most of the changes. You do get a lot more firearms in this one. It's not just like pistol, shotgun, rifle. You get 2 types of pistol, a revolver, which is basically like this game's equivalent of the Magnum. You get a hunting rifle. You get a shotgun. You get an assault rifle. And I think that's it. I might be forgetting one, but yeah. So you get a lot more firearms, and you get a lot of diverse weaponry. Now, one cool thing about the durability mechanic is if you take the like certain objects are insta breaks. They as soon as you swing them, they break. They don't get any more than one swing. But the good thing with those is in a lot of cases when you do that, it usually ends up in whatever creature you hit being an instant down. So you hit them, it shatters, and then they fall to the ground. Now, they're not dead, which leads me into another problem we had, which is the stomping is not consistent. Sometimes it works like a charm, does exactly what you need it to. Other times, does not work at all. You will sit there and spam X the whole time. Does not work, which makes the guns more efficient later on. Now, you do waste ammo. If you use a pistol to finish something off, while it's on the ground, that does still take an ammo. So if you run out of ammo and then you try to finish it off with a gun, I don't think it'll let you finish it off. So keep that in mind, that finishing off enemies in this game is a little bit wonky. I don't know about the PSP version. I don't know if that's because of the port or what, but that definitely made things a little bit more difficult than they probably needed to be. but let's see. I think that's basically all the mechanical and stuff. A lot of notes to read, obviously, while we were exploring. Different areas to explore. Some places we've been, some places we haven't been before in the Silent Hill universe. But this game is a prequel to Silent Hill 1 and 3 by association. So with that, let's talk about the story. So the story basically is about Travis Grady, who is a trucker who decides he is going to take a shortcut past Silent Hill to try to get his load to where he needs to go. But in doing so, he finds that there is a house on fire, and he rushes inside and saves a little girl. The little girl we know is to be Alessa, which if you want to know about Alessa, go watch our playthrough of Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3. That'll give you all the story of that stuff in good detail. But by doing so, Alessa basically kind of puts Travis into the other version of Silent Hill where he can't escape because he needs to help Alessa do something. Now, we don't know what that thing is until the end of the game, but we start to figure it out. But the way we figure that out is by dealing with Travis's own trauma. So the story is very heavily childhood trauma based. Like that is basically the entirety of the story. Travis as an adult, we don't really know much about, other than he seems to be a good guy. You know, he runs into a fire to save a girl. He also doesn't, he tells a guy on the radio that he's not a womanizer, and stuff like that. But we learn a lot about Travis as a child and what happened with him. So Travis is then sent on the mission to, he doesn't know it yet until the end. He doesn't even know what the thing is. He's just stuck in Silent Hill. He's putting together the Floros, which again, if you want to know what the Floros is and why it's important, go watch Silent Hill 1 and 3 playthroughs. That will fill you in on that. Basically, it is a tool that is used in a ritual or around a ritual to do something. So Travis, is dealing with a lot of stuff from his childhood. And when he deals with those stuff, he gets basically a piece of the Floros, because the Floros is connected to, and the ritual at large in a lot of cases in Silent Hill is tied to pain and suffering. So we learn that as a child, Travis's mother tried to kill him. just straight up tried to kill her own child. And they could not get her to believe anything but he was a devil child. So she was locked away in an asylum. And we do meet her, or the Silent Hill version of her, in the game, where Travis still doesn't understand as a child why she would do such a thing. So there's obviously a talk of mental illness in families and how that affects people in the family, which of course leads into another point which we'll get to later. And we get to basically learn that he not only did he, have to deal with his mother being trying to kill him, he had to deal with his mother being absent from that point on. It actually got to the point where his father, with the doctor's suggestion, which is a terrible suggestion, by the way, says that his mother is dead. However, we find out when we're in that segment that he is able to sneak in and find his mother and find out that she is, in fact, not dead. So we learn a little bit about that, and then we work our way through to getting to the second to last area, which is the motel, where we learned about Travis's father. Now, there is a very interesting design choice with the enemies in the motel. They're called a two-back. And if you've not heard the term "a beast with two backs," it's about people that are having intercourse. That is what that's a reference to, and it looks like basically someone like being on top of someone who's like leaning over. It's very obvious what that's supposed to be. because it's a sleazy motel. They have those, like, they have the Cleopatra room and the Nero room and stuff like that. But what's interesting about that is we learn that we assume as players when we see that, like, oh, maybe his dad was like sleeping with someone, maybe he was having an affair, something like that. So that's our assumption going up until we finally enter the dad's room, where we find out that that doesn't seem to be the case, and in fact his dad has unalived himself, which is a body that Travis finds. Now, Travis, there's an interesting conversation Travis has in his head through his father's image, of that the father is blaming him for standing there so long. Why didn't you do something, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of, there's an internal monologue there with Travis blaming himself for what happened with his father, which was not his fault at all. His dad just couldn't take being without his wife, so he decided that he was going to, exit life to be with her. And that is unfortunately where Travis loses his other parent. And he's still very young, so he grows up, obviously, I would assume, in some sort of foster system, which is also where you can see a parallel drawn with some of the stuff with Wish House and Hope House, depending on which game you're talking about. There's that talk about like orphanage kind of stuff, but it's never really directly mentioned in this one, but you can tell that there's probably some connection there of because Travis is, in theory, in Silent Hill when he finds his dad. So, but it's very interesting. We also find Kaufman and Lisa together in a room with a heart-shaped bed. So we get a little bit of a nod to because Lisa, when she leaves, is very upset, but we get a nod to maybe why Lisa attacks Kaufman at the end, on the good ending of Silent Hill 1, which is an interesting addition there. But eventually, Travis makes his way, uses the Floros, releases a demon / not releases a demon to help. Alessa ends up creating that separate part, which we know to be Cheryl and later Heather, and then he drives off into the sunset, or at least onto the road. Now, what's interesting is, I think the commentary here that I really would focus on, or that I want to focus on, is Travis is the example of, you can have terrible things happen to and around you and still not be a terrible person, right? He has a mother who tried to kill him. He has a father who unalived himself. Both of those are very traumatic events. And people wouldn't blame Travis if he went a little bit loony, right? If he kind of went off and did some terrible things. Now, it's not an excuse for terrible things, and Travis knows that. That's why Travis doesn't, so far as we know, doesn't do anything terrible. He doesn't. He mentions that he stays away from drugs because there's some drugs on one of the counters in where we meet Kaufman and Lisa. He says he stays away from that. The guy at the beginning of the radio that's like, oh, you just need to find you a woman, that kind of thing. Travis is like, no, man, I don't do that kind of thing. Like, you can tell that this character, even with all of the trauma that he's gone through, still wants to be a good person, right? And that's even shown through his actions, where he literally runs into a burning building to save. You can see her there, I think. Pretty sure that might be Dahlia, actually. I don't know. Anyways, but he goes into a burning building and saves Alessa, right? Which, by the way, is super dangerous. He could have died in there. It's very easy to get trapped in a fire that's engulfed a house. But he went in there and saved Alessa. So it goes to show that his character, he's just a good person, right? Overall, he's just a good guy, even though he dealt with all of those terrible things as a kid. And for me, that's what's most important about Travis's story, is the fact that, yes, terrible things happen to good people, right? But that doesn't mean that good person has an excuse to be a bad person, right? Or to make bad decisions, I guess is a better way to put it, right? Even though we know what happens to Travis and the terrible things he sees, the terrible things that happen. He's still a good person. And I think that is a very powerful message from this game, that one, you need to learn how to deal with this stuff, which is what Travis kind of does, because he even tells Alessa, or some version of Alessa, he's like, okay, we've dealt with what's in my head, when do we go into your head, right? So he acknowledges this is stuff he thinks about, right? He thinks about his father, he thinks about his mother, he thinks about going to the asylum, he thinks about what happened in the motel and all of that stuff. And so, but it seems like he's been able to kind of process that already, which is what allows him to push forward and continue on with his stuff, because all he wants to do is get out of Silent Hill, right? But I like the idea of a protagonist that shows the level of depth of, I have had bad things happen to me, I have had terrible things happen around me, but that is no excuse for me to be a bad person. And that is what I love about Travis Grady, is just the fact that he is just not a terrible person. Now, there is a bad ending. I don't know what the bad ending entails. It might flip that on its head. I'm going off the good ending, which is what you get when you beat the game once. It's also, I believe, the canonical ending, because we do hear an audio at the end of Harry and his wife finding Cheryl, which, of course, is what starts the whole cascade of Silent Hill 1 and Silent Hill 3. So we're going off the good ending, but like I said, I think that's the takeaway from Origins, is the reason why you need to process that stuff, the reason why you need to get help with that stuff, is so you can get to the point where it's in there. It's always in your head, what happened to you, what happened around you. Like, that's always going to be in there, but it doesn't have to control you, right? It doesn't have to control your actions and making you a bad person or making bad decisions, right? And that's a good thing about Travis Grady, is he's just a good guy regardless of the terrible things that happen to him. So now, if it isn't obvious, I will talk as an overview. That was a little bit of the story. There's a little bit more details in that connect it to Silent Hill 1 and 3, but you should watch the playthrough of this game, and of course 1 and 3. But overall, if it's not obvious, I enjoyed this game. I really did. I was surprised, because I was worried about Silent Hill 4 and Silent Hill Origins. These were the two that I was most worried about, whether I was going to enjoy, but I really do enjoy this one. This one, like I said, is a bit hard because you can't choose the difficulty, but if you can get past the difficulty, it's really good. It's really good. Now, I will say, I always talk about in the overview, I try to talk about the price of this stuff. I believe a copy of Silent Hill Origins is like $130, $140. Let me double check that for you. Okay, Silent Hill Origins, yeah, $132 for a copy of Silent Hill Origins on PS2. Now, the PSP is considerably cheaper. If you have a PSP that can play it, if you're not trying to stream it, then it's probably the better option. But for this copy, it's $132. I will say, that is probably a bit pricier than you might want to spend. This game only has 3 endings, where most of the other games have 4 or more, in a lot of cases. I don't think it's worth $132. I would say emulate the game, but it's definitely worth your time. I do recommend Origins. I really do. Like I said, I was worried about it because I don't think I ever beat it. I think I got close to the end, but I don't think I ever beat it. And I do recommend Origins. It is actually worth playing. There's a lot of depth in there. There's a lot of interesting things in there. There's a lot of discussions of childhood trauma, which is something that happens throughout the Silent Hill series. And I think it's important to talk about just how that interaction works with the action of Travis Grady, and him being just a good person regardless of the terrible things makes this a very good Silent Hill. A very good. Like I said, we had some glitches, we had some bugs, so keep that in mind. I don't know if they'll happen if you emulate it, but at least on the PS2 copy that I'm playing on, there was some glitches and bugs. So let's play Silent Hill Origins. Honestly, I don't think this is our 5th Silent Hill. I don't think there's a Silent Hill yet that I have said not recommended. I think a lot of games in this series are worth playing because there's a lot of great conversations you can have both with yourself but also with others to view these from like different angles and maybe get a different perspective. So thank you so much over there on YouTube. I do appreciate it. If you want to join us here live on Twitch, we are at MaskofGames. You should find a link somewhere in the description or on the page. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. That does help us push these videos out to more people. And I do appreciate you on YouTube, and have a wonderful time. I will see you in the next review. Bye-bye.